Alright guys, so we got ourselves a nice little problem here. It is a challenge for some reason. Let me explain in a moment. We want to convert to the recursive formula, and they give you the explicit one, right? A lot of people might say, Mr. Milano, it's super easy because our first term is right here, and our common difference is always in front of the letter N. And I would agree with you half of the time. The only thing is, if we were to go back to our previous video, explicit formulas have two ways they can be written. Now, I would agree when they write the first one, number one, the first one does talk about the first term right there. And the common difference is always in front of the N, like in the plus 3 on top. I agree with you there. But we are getting the example number 2. And as you can see, compared to the sequence, it's very tricky to think that it's going to match our sequence here. So that's why it's a challenge, guys. And that's why we got to think outside the box in this problem. Well, we still got to find a couple of terms to find the recursive. So what can we do? Very simple. If you guys remembered our first video in lesson 10.1, we remembered that explicit formulas are good for one thing: to plug in. So how about we plug in the terms we're looking for, and then we can find some patterns. So let's go all the way to term number 3. Term number 1, term number 2, and term number 3. Well, guys, what happens if we place, instead of the N, we place a 1 there for the term number? Well, what's 5 times 1? It's a 5. Negative 13 plus 5, isn't that a positive 8? Okay, so that's our first term number. And now let's plug in a 2. Let's plug in a 2. 5 times 2 is a 10. What's negative 13 plus 10? That will be a negative 3. Okay, so far so good. And finally, let's do one more just to play it safe. When you plug in a 3, what's 5 times 3? That's 15. And what's negative 13 plus 15? Negative 13 plus 15, that will be a positive 2. Right? Oh, and sorry about this, guys. I made a little mistake here. I think you guys caught it too. If I were to plug in a 1, that's actually a 5. And even though it is an 8, it's a negative 8. That's why I was getting a little confused. So thank you for catching that. So we go from negative 8 to negative 3 to 2. So can we find the pattern here? What are we doing to these numbers over and over? So now keep in mind, if it's too difficult for you to find it here, remember, since we're doing the same thing over and over, you can also focus on these two numbers. From negative 3 to 2, isn't that a 5 difference? So from negative 3 plus a 5, isn't that a 2? There you have it. So we found ourselves our first term, term number 1, which was negative 8. And we found, what are we doing over and over? Our common difference, which goes here. Common difference. And what are we doing, guys? We're adding a positive 5. And you just converted an explicit formula into a recursive.